I am going to tell you the story of Elsie-Belle exactly once. If you repeat it plainly. Do not add a bell. Do not add red thread. Do not add wet paper. Do not add the thing in the reflection. Those parts are mine. Elsie-Belle was 11 years old when she went missing. She left school on a rainy October afternoon and did not make it home. The next morning, one of her shoes was found in the drainage ditch near the old sycamore on Church Road. The shoe was full of rainwater. That is all. No body, no confession, no message scratched into wood, no sound from the walls. That is all. There were other things people in town knew, but they were not supposed to be part of the story. Her desk stayed empty until Christmas break. Her mom left the porch light on every evening until spring, then stopped all at once. Her teacher kept a spelling worksheet in her desk drawer for years. It had Elsie's name written at the top in blue pencil. The last word was unfinished. The word was because. Elsie had written because, then nothing. Those details were true, but adults did not give them freely. They spoke of them only if asked carefully, and even then their voices lowered, as if ordinary grief could be damaged by too much air. The story itself stayed small. Elsie-Belle was 11. She went missing after school. One shoe was found in the ditch near the sycamore. The shoe was full of rainwater. That was the version we were allowed to tell. That was the version we were supposed to keep. When I was little, I hated how plain it was. Children want stories to bite. We want rules and monsters and punishment. We want the dead to do something dramatic so we can pretend the world is organized. Elsie's story had no shape like that. A child went missing. A shoe filled with rain. No answer came. That was unbearable. The first time I heard someone try to improve it, I was 8 or 9, crouched under a folding table in the basement of St. Agatha's during a church supper. The basement smelled like boiled coffee, damp coats, floor wax, and green bean casserole sweating beneath foil. The tablecloth hung around us in white plastic folds, turning the space underneath into a hot little tent. Above us, adults shifted in metal chairs. Forks scraped paper plates. Someone laughed too loudly near the coffee urn. Under the table with me were 3 older kids, Aaron Pike, Stacy Morrow, and my cousin Beth. Beth was 12, which meant she was old enough to know forbidden things, and young enough to enjoy knowing them. Aaron said his older brother knew the real version. He said Elsie had been found inside the walls of the old school. He said her hair had been braided around her throat. Beth gasped. Stacy whispered, "That's not true." Aaron grinned. I remember only the lower half of his face beneath the tablecloth, pale chin, wet mouth, braces catching the fluorescent light. "It is," he said. "My brother said they heard knocking for years." Before he could say more, my grandmother's hand came down hard on the table above us. Plates jumped. A fork struck the floor. Someone's lemonade tipped and began to drip through the table seam, cold drops landing on my knee. No one under the table moved. The tablecloth lifted. Grandma looked down at us in her blue church sweater, the one with pearl buttons. Her hair was pinned so tightly her forehead looked polished. She smelled like lavender powder, dish soap, and the faint coppery scent of the well water at St. Agatha's. "Don't," she said. Aaron tried to laugh. "We were just messing around." Grandma crouched slowly. Her knees cracked. She did not blink. "You tell it how you heard it," she said. "You don't make it better." We stared at her. She looked at each of us in turn. "You hear me?" We nodded. Later, I found her in the church kitchen, wrists deep in cloudy dishwater. Soap bubbles clung to the fine hairs on her arms. The window above the sink was black with night and reflected the room back at us. 2 sinks, 2 grandmothers, 2 little girls standing too close to something old. "Why can't people tell it different?" I asked. Grandma lifted a plate from the water and wiped it dry. "Because it was bad enough," she said. That was all she would tell me. I learned the rest by watching adults stop conversations. If someone said Elsie had been found in the creek, someone older said, "No, she was not found." If someone said there was blood in the shoe, someone said, "No, rainwater." If someone said a man in a black car had taken her, someone said, "No one knows that." If someone said her ghost rang bells, scratched doors, whispered through drains, or stood beneath the sycamore with her face turned backward, the room would change. Not dramatically. The air would tighten. Then someone would say, "Tell it how you heard it." And if the person kept going, "Don't make it better." By the time I was in high school, the rule had become local etiquette, like wiping mud from your shoes before stepping inside, like not asking why someone's father had stopped coming to church, like lowering your voice when you passed Elsie's old house, even though another family had lived there for 20 years. Then I left. I went to college 3 hours away and learned that anything people refused to explain could be explained by someone else if you gave them enough pages and a citation style. I learned phrases like communal trauma, oral boundary maintenance, and ritualized silence. I learned that grief became more respectable when formatted properly. Professor Voss assigned the folklore paper in October. "Local, familial, regional, digital," he said, pacing the lecture hall with his sleeves rolled precisely to his elbows. "But do not simply summarize. Ask what the story protects. Ask what it permits. Ask what changes. Ask who benefits from the changes." His voice was thin and dry, like pages turning. I liked him. I wanted him to like me. That matters. I was a sophomore then, taking New World oral traditions because it fulfilled a humanities requirement and because I thought it would be easy. It was not. Professor Voss treated folklore like architecture. Every superstition, joke, rhyme, dare, and ghost story had load-bearing walls. If you made a claim, he wanted to know what held it up. I needed an A. Not wanted, needed. My scholarship required a minimum GPA, and I had scraped too close to the edge the semester before. I had failed a chemistry midterm, missed 2 dining hall shifts with the flu, and spent most of March eating instant noodles out of a mug because my meal plan was nearly gone. One more bad grade in the wrong class, and I would have to call my mother and explain numbers neither of us could afford. So when Professor Voss said local folklore, I thought of Elsie-Belle immediately. I wrote the first draft in 3 nights. The first night I wrote the story plainly. Elsie-Belle was 11 years old. She went missing after school. One shoe was found in the drainage ditch near the old sycamore. The shoe was full of rainwater. That is all. The second night I wrote about the rule. I called it a community-enforced anti-variation taboo. I was proud of that phrase. The third night, I argued that the town's refusal to embellish Elsie's disappearance functioned as an ethical boundary. The story survived not by expanding, but by refusing to turn a child's absence into entertainment. I leaned back after typing that sentence and felt, briefly, clean. The dorm room was dark except for my desk lamp. My roommate, Kara, slept with one arm hanging off the bed, fingers curled toward the floor. Rain ticked against the window. The radiator hissed behind me, filling the room with dry, breathy heat. I submitted the rough draft at 1:07 a.m. Professor Voss returned it 10 days later. B+. Under other circumstances, that would have been fine. Under mine, it felt like a door closing. His comments were kind, which made them worse. The analysis was strong. The frame was promising. The concept was compelling. But the central legend remains under-rendered. Even restraint needs texture. What does the reader remember after closing the page? Farther down, he circled Elsie-Belle's name twice. Not the whole sentence, just the name. His pencil had pressed hard enough that the paper was bruised beneath the graphite. In the margin he wrote, "The surname is doing work you haven't let it do yet." Then at the bottom, "Ethical restraint is admirable, but absence still needs an anchor. Make absence legible." I carried the paper back to my dorm through rain that had turned the sidewalks black and reflective. My socks were wet by the time I reached my room. Kara had left half an orange on the windowsill, and the peel filled the air with a bright, bruised smell. I sat at my desk, opened the draft. The cursor blinked after Elsie-Belle. Bell. It sat there waiting. A bell at night. A school bell, a church bell, a sound no one could locate. The name wanted it. That was the first lie. Not that I wanted it, that the story did. I remember Grandma's hand striking the church table. Don't. I remember my mother correcting a neighbor boy who once claimed Elsie's shoe had teeth marks in it. No, rainwater. I remember the rule. You tell it how you heard it. But Professor Voss's voice moved neatly underneath those memories. Even restraint needs texture. Make absence legible. I told myself I was not changing the story. I was identifying a hypothetical oral variant, a rhetorical illustration, a way of demonstrating what the town's taboo resisted. That sounded academic enough to feel like permission. So I added one paragraph. In later tellings, the school bell was said to have rung at 2:13 a.m. the night Elsie vanished, though no one admitted to entering the building. By morning, her shoe had been found in the ditch beneath the sycamore, full of rainwater. There had never been a bell, not in any version I had heard. I knew that. Still, the paragraph looked good. Worse than good. It made the paper breathe. The story had a name now, a point of return, something a reader could carry. I submitted the revision at 11:48 p.m. At 2:13 a.m., I woke with my teeth humming. Not from a dream, not from my phone, not from the campus clock tower, which only rang on the hour and sounded tinny through hidden speakers. This was one note, low, metallic. It seemed to come from both very far away and inside the wall behind my bed, as if distance had folded wrong in the dark. I sat up so quickly my blanket slid to the floor. The room was black except for the weak orange light leaking around the blinds. Kara's bed was empty. She had gone out after dinner and not come back yet. Rain trembled against the glass. The bell did not ring again, but the air held its shape afterward. My mouth tasted like I had bitten foil. In the morning, Professor Voss gave me an A. I stared at the grade in the online portal until the screen blurred. A. Not A minus, A. His final comments read, "Much stronger. The bell gives the legend mythic resonance without overwhelming the ethical frame. Excellent revision." Excellent revision. I should have felt afraid. I did feel afraid. but I also felt relieved. That is the part I hate admitting. For a few days, relief outweighed everything else. The bell became something I could half convince myself I had dreamed. The metallic taste faded. My scholarship was safe. Professor Voss knew my name. Then he emailed, "Would you be comfortable if I shared your page with a few colleagues? Your treatment of anti-establishment as taboo is excellent. This could be useful for our undergraduate folklore archive." Useful. The word opened something in me. Useful meant I had done something right. Useful meant I was not just a student trying not to fall through the cracks. Useful meant someone had found value in what I made. I thought of Grandma's voice because it was bad enough. Then I thought of tuition. I wrote back, "Of course, thank you so much." The first time Professor Voss discussed my paper with faculty, he invited me to sit in. It was a lunch meeting in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee, projector heat, and mustard. Rain tapped steadily against the windows. 6 professors sat around the table with paper plates balanced near stacks of printed pages. Professor Voss introduced my work with the careful pride of someone displaying a promising specimen. "A legend whose primary taboo is against variation," he said. "A story that survives by forbidding improvement." One professor laughed softly. "Deliciously self-protective." Another said, "Or self-generating." Dr. Halden from the English department tapped the printed copy with one dark red fingernail. "The bell is elegant," she said. "Almost too elegant. But that's why it works. The surname generates the image." Professor Voss nodded. "Exactly. It makes the absence audible." Dr. Halden smiled at me. "The shoe is still the most compelling object, though. A child's shoe full of rainwater. That has power." I nodded, because I did not trust myself to speak. "But," she continued, "if this were circulating orally, wouldn't the material detail migrate? Rainwater is passive. The body wants a trace. A thread around the wrist, perhaps. Something intimate. Something that marks participation." My wrist prickled beneath my sleeve. There had been no thread in my paper. Not yet. Professor Voss made a note. "What do you think?" he asked me. Everyone looked over. The room was too warm. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. A grape rolled loose from someone's plate and came to rest near my hand. Its skin split, juice wetting the napkin beneath it. I thought of my grandmother lifting the tablecloth. I thought of Professor Voss's A. "I could mention that as a later variant," I said. Dr. Halden's smile widened. "Yes, exactly. Folklore accumulates around the body." That night, I dreamt my hand was under water. Just my hand, pale and wavering beneath the surface of a ditch. I could not see my arm. I could not feel the rest of myself. Rain struck the water above me in small silver wounds. A red thread floated near my wrist. At first, it drifted. Then it circled. Once, twice, tighter. I woke with my hand between my teeth. I had bitten down hard enough to leave crescent marks in my fingers. A thin red line circled my wrist. Not blood, not a cut. An indentation as if something had been tied there while I slept. The department posted my paper on its internal archive the following week. By then, the wrist detail had become a footnote. I wrote it carefully. Some later student tellings reportedly moved the thread from the recovered shoe to the wrist of the teller, transforming the object from evidence into consequence. Reportedly. Later. Student tellings. All little academic cushions. The page title read, The Elsie-Belle Legend, Anti-Variation Taboo in Rural Oral Tradition. My name was underneath. Then the communications office found it. In November, Professor Voss forwarded me an email chain with 3 exclamation points. This is getting traction. Communications want to feature it for the Haunted History series. Excellent work. The communications office changed the title. Not much, just enough. The girl who rang the bell. They added a header image, a black and white photograph of a church bell tower under storm clouds. It was not from my town. I do not think it was even from my region. It looked right anyway. That became the problem with everything that followed. It looked right. They tightened the prose, added a pull quote, cropped the bell tower so the black mouth of the belfry hovered above Elsie's name. They also added a sentence I had not written. In some versions, Elsie can still be heard after heavy rain, whispering through a mouthful of wet paper. Wet paper. I stared at the phrase. It had the sickening quality of something invented well. I emailed Professor Voss. Did you add the wet paper detail? He replied 20 minutes later. I believe that came from communication synthesizing discussion from the faculty lunch. Effective, though. It extends the oral textual theme nicely. Folklore evolves. Folklore evolves. That night, I woke choking. My mouth was full. At first, I thought I had vomited. I rolled out of my bed, struck my knee on the metal frame, and gagged into my palm. Paper came out. Not sheets, not a note. A gray-white pulp pressed flat against my tongue and the inside of my cheek. It clung to my fingers in wet flakes. The taste was old water, ink, and cardboard left in rain. I crawled to the trash can and spat until my throat burned. Kara sat up in bed. What the hell? I could not answer. I was scraping my tongue with my fingernails. She turned on the light. The room snapped into ugly clarity. Laundry, textbooks, wet paper in the trash. My own face reflected in the dark window above my desk. The pulp had begun to separate. Letters showed on some of the scraps. Not words, fragments. Not. Kara stared into the trash. Did you eat paper? I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. She climbed down from her bed slowly, as if approaching a dog she was afraid might bite. I'm calling campus health. No, I said. My mouth sounded scraped raw. Please don't. Her eyes dropped to my wrist. The red line was visible beneath my sleeve. What is going on with you? I almost told her, but the thought of saying Elsie's name in that room made the radiator hiss louder. So I said, Stress. Kara did not believe me. But roommates are sometimes merciful in the way strangers can be. She gave me water and did not ask again that night. The next morning, my tongue was gray. I brushed it until it bled. Then I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring. I could hear a television in the background, the faint clink of a spoon against a mug. Everything okay? I tried to say yes. Instead, I said, Tell me the Elsie-Belle story. The television went quiet. My mother did not speak for several seconds. Then she said, Why? I just need to hear it. No, she said. Why? There are moments when you realize your parents have always been afraid of things they never explained. Not because they wanted mystery, because explanation itself felt like invitation. I wrote about it, I said. For class? Yes. Another silence. What did you write? The true version. My mother breathed once through her nose. What else? I closed my eyes. A bell? She made a small sound. Not a word, a wound. And thread? I said. My mother whispered my name. It was how she used to say it when I stepped too close to the road. And someone else added paper. The line between us crackled softly. I needed a good grade, I said. I hated myself before the sentence was finished. My mother did not comfort me. That was how I knew she was scared. Listen, she said. Elsie-Belle was 11 years old. She went missing after school. One shoe was found in the ditch near the sycamore. The shoe was full of rainwater. That is all. I know. No, she said sharply. You don't. The radiator clicked beside me. I flinched. My mother's voice lowered. When I was little, Aaron Pike told everyone Elsie was found with her eyes sewn shut. He thought it was funny. He liked making younger kids cry. I remembered Aaron under the church table, his braces, his wet grin. What happened? I asked. He got an infection in both eyes that winter. Doctor said allergies at first, then bacteria, then something else. They never agreed. My mouth filled with saliva. There was a girl who said Elsie knocked from inside closets, my mother continued. For months, her parents heard knocking from her bedroom closet every night, even after they took the door off. Mom, you asked. I pressed my forehead against my knees. She was just a child, my mother said. I could hear the effort in her voice. The restraint. The old-town habit of stopping before a story became useful. People wanted her to be more than that. A warning, a dare, a ghost, but she was just gone. I thought of the header image, the bell tower from nowhere near us, the poll quote, the word effective. She was bad enough, I whispered. Yes, my mother said. Take it down. I tried. The department removed the archive page after 2 days. By then, it had already been copied. The first repost appeared on a student horror forum under the title, Local Legend Punishes You If You Tell It Wrong. Then a short video appeared over footage of rainy roads and an abandoned church that was not St. Agatha's. Then a podcast called Small Town Rot did an episode. The host had a low, intimate voice, the kind people use when they want horror to feel like a secret. Tonight, he said, we're talking about Elsie-Belle, the girl who rang after death. After death. That was new. Halfway through describing the shoe, she cut to an ad for a meal delivery service. I sat on my dorm floor with my laptop open, listening to a woman sell discount ravioli between invented details about a dead child. The comments loved the rule. Tell it how you heard it. Don't make it better. They repeat that part perfectly. Then they improved everything else. For a while, I tried to correct them. I made anonymous accounts. I left comments. I wrote the true version over and over beneath videos, podcasts, reposts, threads. Elsie-Belle was 11. She went missing after school. One shoe was found in the ditch. The shoe was full of rainwater. That is all. People thanked me for the alternate ending. One person replied, Honestly, the original version is kind of boring, but that makes it creepier, lol. Another said, Wait, no Belle? Then why is her last name Bell? Missed opportunity. Missed opportunity. I stared at those words until the room went thin around me. By December, I stopped sleeping through the night. At 2:13 a.m., I woke whether a bell rang or not. Sometimes to water dripping, though the ceiling was dry. Sometimes to the taste of paper. Sometimes to the sensation of thread tightening around my wrist, though nothing was there when I turned on the light. The mark did not fade anymore. It changed. It became smooth and shiny, less like a bruise and more like a seam. Kara moved out after finals. She was kind about it. My cousin has a place off campus, she said, not meeting my eyes. It'll be cheaper. We both know it would not be cheaper. After she left, the dorm room felt too large. Her empty bed stretched in the dark. The second desk became a surface for shadows. I slept with the lamp on until the bulb gave the room a hot, dusty smell. Professor Voss stopped answering emails in January. I saw him once outside the humanities building, standing under the overhang while rain poured from the roof in silver ropes. He looked thinner. His collar was buttoned wrong. His skin had the gray tint of a person who had forgotten sunlight. "Professor," I called. He turned. For 1 second he looked relieved. Then he saw my wrist. I saw his mouth. His lips were cracked, the corners raw. His jaw worked slightly, as though he were chewing something. "You need to take your name off it," I said. He laughed once, a dry, papery sound. "Which version?" Rainwater rushed along the curb behind him, carrying leaves and cigarette butts. "I didn't add the paper," I said. "No," he replied. "I did." I stared at him. "For the podcast," he said. They wanted an expert comment. I was explaining textual accretion. It needed an example. Needed. There it was again, that small, hungry word. "I thought," he said, swallowing carefully, "if I identified it as a variant, that would distance it." Did it? He looked towards the campus clock tower. It wasn't really a bell tower. The bells had been removed years earlier and replaced with speakers, but at noon it still chimed. The first note rang. Professor Voss flinched. The second rang. His hand rose to his jaw. The third, his eyes watered. "I hear it when I chew," he said. I did not know what to say. Rain struck the pavement. Students passed us laughing. Backpacks held over their heads. He leaned closer. His breath smelled like damp paper and old coffee. "Do you know the worst part?" he asked. I shook my head. "I keep thinking of better lines." The clock tower chimed again. Professor Voss pressed both hands over his mouth. That was the last time I saw him. The university announced in February that he had taken medical leave. 2 weeks later, someone in the department accidentally uploaded one of his lecture decks to the course page. It was titled Oral Variation and Communal Limits. There were 42 slides. The first 31 were normal. Definitions, examples, diagrams. A photograph of children playing telephone. A slide about rumor transmission during wartime. Slide 32 was blank except for one sentence. Absence requires no ornament. Slide 33 said, "No bell." Slide 34. No bell, no bell. Slide 35. No bell, no bell, no bell, no bell. By slide 40, the words filled the page in shrinking font, layered over one another until they became a gray block. The final slide had no text, only an image. Elsie's spelling worksheet, or something like it. White paper, blue pencil, child's handwriting. The word because unfinished. Because. The department removed the file within an hour, but someone had already downloaded it. Someone always had. That was when the story stopped belonging to any of us. A horror game appeared in March. You played as a student in a flooded school, trying to tell Elsie's story correctly before the bell rang 13 times. If you chose the wrong detail, red thread appeared around the screen's edges. The final level took place in a basement. There was never a basement. 2 days after the game went viral, I woke with dirt packed beneath my fingernails. Not dust, not soil from a potted plant, wet, black earth. It smelled of worms, rust, and old rain. I scrubbed until my fingers bled. People loved the basement. Of course they did. A missing girl is sad. A basement is content. The worst happened in April. There was a forum thread titled, Building the Definitive Elsie-Belle Timeline. I should not have opened it. I knew that. But by then, the story had become a room I kept re-entering to check whether it had caught fire. The thread was active. New comments appeared every few seconds. The original post had bullet points. Elsie-Belle, 11, missing after school. Shoe found in ditch. Bell rang at 2:13 a.m. Red thread tied around wrist. Wet paper and mouth. Possible basement connection. Professor cover-up. Mother, grandmother knew more. Underneath, people were debating what made the most sense. One user wrote, "The bell is too obvious, but also too good to cut." Another said, "Red thread needs a reason. Maybe it was used to sew her mouth shut." My jaw tightened. A third, No, the wet paper should be her unfinished homework, like they find pages in her mouth." My tongue pushed against my teeth. The thread refreshed. What if the last word on her worksheet was because, and she never finished it? I stopped breathing. That was true. That was not supposed to be part of the story. It had been ours, local, softly held, not public. I had written it in one essay draft, then cut it. Hadn't I? I searched my files, my folders, my old versions. I found nothing. The comment sat there, glowing on the screen. Another user replied, "That's so good! Because gives it mystery. Because what?" Then another, "Maybe if she appears, she whispers because, but never finishes. Then, maybe the curse is trying to finish the sentence. Then, maybe the narrator is the because." The bakery ovens thumped below my apartment. Rain tapped the window. My mouth tasted like wet cardboard. I tried to type a correction. I wrote, "That detail is not for you." Before I could send it, the page refreshed. A new comment appeared. No username, just text. "Then why did you bring it here?" The room went cold. Not metaphorically. The skin along my arms tightened. My breath came out in a pale thread. I had not posted anything. The cursor blinked in the comment box. "That detail is not for you." The words looked childish suddenly. Useless. Then another comment appeared. Because. Then another. Because. Then another. Because. The screen filled with it. Because. 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 All lowercase. No punctuation. The radiator knocked once. Then again. Then a third time. From somewhere under my desk came the slow sound of water dripping into leather. I did not look. Not immediately. I sat there with my hands hovering above the keyboard while the thread refreshed itself faster and faster. Because. The word lost shape, became texture, became sound. Then a mouth trying to close around an answer. When I finally looked down, there was a child's shoe beneath my desk. Small, brown, scuffed at the toe, full of dark water. A strip of red thread was tied through the eyelets. Floating on the surface was a piece of paper. I knew what it said before I touched it. I knew, and I still reached for it. The paper was soft enough that my fingers almost passed through. It smelled like ditch water, pencil shavings, and the inside of a wet cardboard box. Written in blue pencil. Because. Nothing after. The laptop chimed. One more comment had appeared. Finish it. I left before dawn. I drove home through rain so heavy the highway seemed to dissolve. My wipers beat back and forth, frantic and useless. Gas station coffee burned my tongue and tasted like pennies. Every red traffic light looked wet and watchful. When I reached Church Road, I stopped at the old sycamore. I had not meant to. The tree leaned over the ditch, branches bare and black against the gray morning. Its bark peeled in pale patches like old skin. Rainwater moved slowly below, carrying leaves, grit, a flattened soda can. I stood at the edge of the road with my hood up and my shoes sinking into soft mud. The ditch smelled alive and dead at once. Wet earth, weeds, rusted metal, rot beginning under leaves. I said the true version aloud, or as close as I had it. Elsie-Belle was 11. She went missing after school. One shoe was found here. It was full of rainwater. That is all. Cars passed without slowing. Rain fell. Nothing answered. That should have comforted me. It did not. My mother was waiting on the porch when I arrived. She wore a sweater over her nightgown and rubber boots with mud on the toes, as if she'd been standing there for a long time. She opened the door and let me in without asking what happened. The house smelled like coffee, laundry soap, old wood, and the lemon oil she used on the kitchen table. For one brief second, I felt almost safe. Then I saw my grandmother's dish towel hanging from the oven handle. White cotton, blue flowers faded almost gray. A line of red thread had been stitched along the edge. My mother followed my gaze. Her face went empty. "I didn't do that," she said. We burned everything we could print. My paper, the archive page, screenshots, podcast transcript, forum posts, comments, titles, variations, Professor Voss's slides, the forum thread. Paper curled black in the fire pit behind the house. Smoke rose in wet, reluctant columns, smelling of ink, chemicals, and rain. My mother stood beside me, holding an umbrella neither of us fit under. Water dripped from her sleeve onto my wrist. The red mark shone beneath it, dark and clean. "It won't be enough," she said. "I know." But I kept feeding pages into the flames. Because movement can look like repair if you are desperate enough. By morning, there were new versions. In one, my mother and I burned the wrong papers. In one, Elsie watched from the sycamore. In one, my grandmother invented the rule because she had been the first to lie. That last one made my mother sit down on the kitchen floor. "She didn't," she whispered. I sat beside her. The linoleum was cold through my jeans. "I know," I said. But somewhere, someone had made it sound right. And that was enough. I stayed at my mother's house for 2 weeks. During the day, we did ordinary things with an intensity that made them feel ceremonial. Washed cups, folded towels, made soup, took out trash, paid bills. We moved through rooms bright with winter light and pretended the world still had edges. At night, the house became aware. Not visibly. The refrigerator clicked on and off. Pipes knocked, rain tapped into the gutters. The old floorboards had shifted in the cold. Each sound arrived carrying too much meaning. At 2:13 every morning, I woke. Sometimes to a bell, sometimes to the memory of one. Sometimes to my mother standing in the doorway, watching me with a face so tired it looked bruised. Once I woke because something was brushing my lips. A strip of paper slid slowly out from between my teeth. My mother pulled it free with trembling fingers. It was blank. For almost a minute, we both stared at it. Then letters rose through the wet fibers. Not written, emerging. "Make it resonate." My mother made a sound like something tearing. After that, I stopped saying I was going to fix it. Fixing was the wrong word. Correction had become part of the spread. Every time I wrote there was no bell, the bell returned. Every time I wrote there was no thread, the thread tightened. Every time I wrote that there was no wet paper, someone remembered the texture of it. Denial left an outline. Outlines were enough. I went back to my apartment because staying home had begun to feel like carrying mold into my mother's walls. I wrote one more post. I titled it, "Do Not Make Elsie-Belle Better." I wrote it plainly. I explained the rule. I had explained what I had done. I explained what followed. I gave the true version, or the closest thing to it that remained. Elsie-Belle was 11 years old. She went missing after school. One shoe was found in the drainage ditch near the old sycamore. The shoe was full of rainwater. That is all. Then I tried to list what was false. No bell, no red thread, no wet paper, no girl in the walls, no voice in the drain, no knocking from the closets, no mouth sewn shut, no basement, no professor hearing bells in his teeth, no student found with thread around her fingers, no mother burning papers in the rain, no grandmother who lied first, no figure standing behind the writer in the dark reflection of her laptop screen. I stopped there. The apartment was quiet except for the bakery ovens below and the rain against the window. The laptop screen was dark around the document, reflective at the edges. For a moment, I saw only myself. Pale face, hollow eyes. hair unwashed and hanging close to my cheeks. Then I saw a shape behind me. Small. Still. I did not turn around. I deleted the sentence. Then I typed it again, because by then I understood. Removing a detail is not the same as starving it. Sometimes it feeds better on the shape of its own absence. I posted the essay anyway. By morning, it had been shared thousands of times. People praised it. They said it was raw. They said it was layered. They said it was meta. They said the ending gave them chills. One comment had more likes than the post itself. No figure standing behind the writer is such a good detail. I closed the laptop. At 2:13 that night, the bell rang once. Not far away, not in the walls, inside my mouth. My teeth vibrated, my tongue went numb, the taste of metal spread across my gums. When I turned on the light, my reflection stared back from the dark window. There was no one behind me. I need that to be clear. There was no one behind me. Not then. I do not sleep much now. Lack of sleep changes memory. It softens the edges. It lets other people's versions in. Every morning I say the true story aloud. Some days I hesitate. Was Elsie 11? Was it Church Road? Was there a lunch tin? Was the shoe brown? Did the shoe have her name written inside it, or did I add that because a child's handwriting makes grief easier to hold? My mother will not tell it anymore. She says each repetition wears the truth thinner. She says maybe the kindest thing left would be silence. But silence does not travel. Not anymore. A story that asks not to be improved sounds like a dare. That the false parts are beautiful in the way infections can be beautiful under a microscope. The bell, the thread, the paper, the basement, the figure in the glass. They are vivid. They are useful. They are easier to remember than a child's empty desk. Easier than a porch light left on until spring. Easier than one small shoe full of rainwater. Easier than Beka written in blue pencil, waiting for a reason no one ever found. That is how I know we are losing her. Not because people forgot Elsie-Belle, because now they remember everything else first.